Oh, I can share these slides.
Oh. Okay, cool. Well, the slides, you are on there too.
Yeah, make sure the slides, so they can see what we're talking about. We don't want there to be mystery.
Okay.
I think people think I spit.
Are you going to need this too? Probably.
I don't know, maybe. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it past me, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, everybody, thank you for attending Listings That Sell. We have Anna McKissack, our regional director, and she is now over 5 states, right? No,
4,
My bad. 4 states. Yeah, 4 states. I know that there's 4,600 agents in the Ohio Valley region. I don't know how many in.
It's a little bitty. The other one's 1,400.
Okay, over 6,000 agents is who she's talking to on a daily basis, and top producing ones at that. And so we have literally an expert of who's going to teach us listings that sell rather than sit, because she's hearing all different strategies and she's bringing it to us today. So thank you.
Yep. Excited to be here. Hi, everybody.
Yay.
Happy Thursday.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for giving us a second to start a little bit late. Erin and I had an impromptu lunch date, and last time I had Chipotle, and then I taught a class. Somebody sat in the front row the whole time, went like this. I'm like, what a weird, it was a guy, and I was like, what a weird thing to do. And then after an hour of teaching, he goes, you got something in your teeth. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, so I have learned my lesson since then. So thank you for giving us the extra 3 minutes so I can go check that and not have that again. Okay, listings that sell instead of sitting. 2/3 of the listing on the market right now are selling for below list price, and a lot of them are for price reductions. So I saw an article a couple of weeks ago saying that roughly, I think it was 67% of listings were selling below the original list price, so that's 2/3. And on average, houses right now across the country are selling at 8% below the original list price. So that either means that they had a price reduction or they got an offer at 8% below the list price. That's actually quite a bit. So we want to make sure with days on market increasing, there's 2 different parts. This is kind of a 2-part class that I want you guys to be able to understand. Did anybody watch the economic update with GK? 1? Okay, 1. Oh, awesome. Oh, maybe I should have kept the entire first part of this. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to look at is this is a 2-part thing. We need to understand what is the crystal ball that we have to understand what's going on with interest rates so that we can prepare consumers for what to expect while they're doing listings. And then what are our options that we can place on the table for the 2/3 of people that are going to sell below their list price, and how do we prepare them for that so that they're not saying you as the agent and blaming you and playing the blame game. And then number 3, what do we do with the inevitably difficult people that say no? Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk crystal ball of what's happening right now. Anybody keeping up with oil prices, unemployment, war?
Yeah.
All of the things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gas is high.
Yes.
Getting higher.
Yes. So this is very interesting about what's happening right now. Just from an economic, I'm not talking from a political standpoint, we're just plain going to talk economics on it. So did last year, 2025, feel just different? Even though we have 3 years in a row of having 4.1 million units sold across the country, last year just felt inherently just a little bit different. Did y'all feel that? You agree with that? Okay. So the reason why is because we have 6 different markets that were happening. So we have the market that is being projected, that people are expecting. We have consumers that are always 6 months behind what's actually happening to where they play catch up. And then we have the 4 different markets that are actually happening. So that creates 6 different markets. That creates mass confusion with people, right? And then as realtors, it's funny because normally we can kind of break through the noise and we're able to say, okay, I understand what news outlets are telling you, I understand what predictions are telling you, but here's what's happening right now. For example, in 2008, whenever there was a housing crisis caused because of loans, was that only in a particular part across the country that there was a loan issue? Or was it across the entire country?
Across the entire country.
It was across the entire country. Everybody had the same problem. Everybody was on the same playing field. Well, not this time. And that's why right now just feels a little bit different, okay? So I want you to understand the 4 quadrants, because we don't want to show up to our appointments and say, no, that's not accurate, you were told wrong, ignore the last person who told you that, because now it becomes adversarial of you versus the last person and who do I believe, okay? And the only reason of who they believe is who said it more confidently. That's the only thing they have to go off of. So we want the answer to be yes and. So yes, that is accurate. That's actually what's happening a little bit more on the West Coast, or that's what's happening in the Midwest here, or that's what's happening in the South or on the East Coast. So let me just kind of tell you based on these 4 quadrants, if you would like this specific image, if you go on to KW Connect and look at Gary's State of the Market from MegaCamp, these 4 quadrants were, this is one of the slides that you can pull from there, and it's on the slide deck. So typically, whenever news outlets are interviewing people for what's going on across the country, what 2 states are typically interviewed? People from California and where else?
New York.
New York. Okay, those are already in 2 competing areas of the country. Because usually the reason why that they interview from those 2 places is, you know how we say things happen in the coast and then they work their way in? So what the actual name of that is called the Smile of America, right here. So that makes a lot of sense. We're like, oh, duh. We've got California, we've got, you know, the Phoenix, Arizona area, we've got Texas, we've got Florida, we've got going up the East Coast. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. We've heard about, oh, sorry, I'm pressing buttons here. We've heard about that before. The way that we confidently and clearly communicate what's happening in the market to be able to tell people, hey, I kind of have the crystal ball of what's going to happen, is by being able to identify terms that make it sound really simple. One of the things they talked about at CEO Summit was if you can lower the cognitive load of the way that you communicate with people, then they can understand it a lot more, and they feel like if you can simplify things, then you really know what you're talking about, right? You know when you're talking to somebody and they're over explaining and they can't quite say, and you're like, okay, you don't know what you're talking about. So if they say, well, in California, oh yeah, you know what, that's actually called the Smile of America, right there. Okay, so we want to be able to use these terms. So right now, the Smile of America has already had its high and its low. Think 2024 or 2025, I'm sorry, I'm losing my marbles here. Think 2021, 2022, and then the shift happened. And remember, California went up by like 35% in values. And then in the low, they plummeted in their values. So the Smile of America has already had its high and its low. So that's why in the Midwest, in the high seasons, we're having a little bit of FOMO, and in the low seasons for the rest of the country, we're singing praises to Jesus that we're not a part of that, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in a really good spot to where we don't have these high highs and these low lows. We kind of operate like this on our shifts in the country. So there's some blessings to it and some curses to it. However, because the Smile of America has already had its high and its low, the interesting part is we are hearing more about this place called the Sun Belt of America. And that's where the current shift is happening. So that's what created some confusion, because we're used to California and New York and Florida and Texas having their big shifts. But because they've already had their big shifts and operating in 2 different types, this is what's called the Sun Belt right here. It's the southeast corridor of Texas, all the way down the south side of these couple of states and down the west side of Florida. We know Florida is getting double hit just because of insurance. We know because of all kinds of stuff, it's getting double hit, plus being in that Sun Belt area right there. So the definition of what has been shifting has changed. And so I think it's Naples, Florida. It's somewhere on this little west coast of Florida, or Sarasota, somewhere right around there, is the highest area of the increase in amount of available units, aka inventory, has increased the most out of everywhere, and that has the highest amount of price corrections, okay? So that's the new term of where the shift is happening. So now let's talk quadrants. So what's happening in the West Coast quadrant is we know they've already had their high and their low. There are 2, I don't know how to turn that off on my computer. If anybody knows how to do that, I should probably ask Josh. I have my phone on silent. It just makes
You have to do it on your computer.
There we go. We'll do that. I do know how to do that. Okay. So the 2 units that we're looking at is we're looking at the amount of units being sold and the price increase versus decrease, okay? So the amount of units the amount of prices increasing in here, they're actually flat on pricing because they've already had their high and their low. However, the amount of units being sold in this West Coast area is down by 9%. So that's quite aggressive, okay? Down in the South here, we have two converging markets, which makes it extra confusing because the number one area people are moving to in the country is called the Triangle of Texas. It is DFW area, so not the DFW Triangle, don't be confused with that. It's DFW, Austin, and Houston. Between those three cities, that is the most moved to area in the country. But the interesting part is that's also in the same quadrant of the Sun Belt, which we just talked about, has the highest amount of inventory and the most amount of price reductions. So that makes it a little bit confusing. So their prices are actually only down by 1%, and their units are down by 4%. I think the units being pulled down more is more attributed to this, but the price is holding a little bit more steady is because of the mixture of this right here, okay? Up in the Midwest, we actually have an updated number up here. So up in the Midwest, what's happening up here is our units are down by 2%, so a minor shift, but our volume is up by 3.4%. So now we have flat down, a little bit down, up. So that makes it a little bit different because over here prices are down or here prices are flat and we're saying, oh, up here prices are up. And here they're saying way less houses are selling. And we're saying, well, yeah, a little bit. And they're saying, yeah, that kind of depends on where you're at. This is why there's different messaging. Now, in this Northeast corridor, they're looking at the rest of the country and they're saying, y'all have lost your ever-loving mind. What in the world are you talking about? I don't know what shift you're talking about because their inventory is still super tight and their prices are up by 7%. 7% increase in prices. They're still having multiple offers. They're still in a tight inventory. And everyone else is talking about a shift and they're like, what in the world? So if you have a client that maybe they just sold a family member's property, maybe a family member just passed away and they just sold a property up there and then they're moving over here, we're really truthfully not that far off in Ohio. And so they might think that it bleeds over into this area. How different could this possibly be? Well, it's different. So that's one of the things that we have to be able to say yes and. Yes, that's accurate. That's a little bit more accurate here. Yes, that's accurate to where, Kentucky is actually listed in the southern markets, but there's a lot that it bleeds into in the Cincinnati markets and what bleeds into what, Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Good? Awesome. I wanted to make sure that we understood that. So there are three main topics. So this is just formally the economic side of it. When economists, I'm going to call the Federal Reserve, when they meet, it's a group of people, which Jerome Powell has been in the news a lot, the Federal Reserve has been in the news a lot, and when the Federal Reserve meets, they look at three main topics, and then everything else does not have as much of a weight as the three main topics when they're choosing what to do with interest rates, whether to raise them, to lower them, or to keep them the same, okay? Even though Trump keeps calling for the Federal Reserve to lower prices, there was a big argument that was in the news probably about a month to a month and a half ago, to where when they were trying to remove Jerome Powell, essentially the whole goal was this side of the government wanted to say, I want to enact policy in order to change the interest rates. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that was the argument, okay? And this side of the government, the Federal Reserve, then because they're a separate entity, they were saying, no, we just want to look at economic factors and then choose what to do from there. We don't want any policy to tell us what we have to do or we don't have to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so nobody's paying us for our opinions, they're paying us for the facts, and how do we bring clarity to that, okay? So, the three main things that the Federal Reserve looks at is unemployment, GDP, and inflation. Those three. So we're going to make sure that we understand those three. Because inevitably what happens is at the beginning of the year, Federal Reserve comes out and they say, here's what we're going to do. Like this year, the goal was we're going to keep interest rates the same all year long until the very end of the year, and then we're going to lower them one time. And then all of a sudden, jobs started going away, and there wasn't enough jobs for people. So then they said, oh my gosh, we have to lower interest rates. And so they lowered interest rates, and then we went down into the 5.9s. Well, if we went onto Facebook or Instagram and we start communicating what the Federal Reserve told us, and then they don't do what they said they were going to do, oh my gosh, we've never had that happen before, then that's one of the reasons where you don't see as many I saw the least amount of realtors doing it this year that I have any year, going onto social media and teaching what they heard the Federal Reserve say. And it's because we don't want to do it anymore, because they told us 3 years in a row that they're going to lower rates 4 times, and then they didn't do it.
Make you look like an idiot.
It makes us look like an idiot. So the whole goal is, how do we know what to prepare people for if we don't have a glass ball? I want y'all to have a glass ball. And the way that you have a glass ball is just by looking at unemployment, GDP, and inflation. And I'm telling you, every morning, whenever people typically roll over and they get onto Facebook or they get onto social media and they scroll through their phone and start the doom scroll for the day, instead, just swipe left and read the articles. That's all you got to do. I spend 15 to 20 minutes every morning, and I just read through the articles, anything that has to do with interest rates, employment, inflation, and GDP. Those 4 things. That's it. Okay? And I'll tell you everything that you need to know. Now, right now, I'm also adding anything that has to do with oil prices, because that's also impacting this. But let's talk about why. So unemployment really is king right now. That is the thing that the Federal Reserve is hanging their hat on most recently. However, I know with this impending war and also with everything that's going on with oil prices, it has added a little bit more to the mix. But right now we're looking at unemployment as the most important topic, okay? So if we're looking at unemployment, the yellow is the job openings. How many jobs are available for people? The blue is how many unemployed people are there. At 5 million, it's typically considered to be everybody who wants a job has a job. There's always going to be people switching jobs. There's always going to be people taking a break between jobs. There's always going to be people who choose to not be employed. So at 5 million, that's considered the most healthy number, okay? So what happened if we look back into January 2020? Let's never go back and do that again. However, what happened there is we know that a bunch of people got laid off, okay? So we had a bunch of unemployed people. And then the government made a decision at the time with the information that they have, and they started doing stimulus checks to people. So then people were at home, and they started spending money, and then there was the great order that happened. That's when online ordering had its boom. And then all the people that these jobs had laid off were like, oh shoot, we need to fulfill these orders, which takes people to do that. So then they wanted people to come back, and they needed help because people started buying a lot more because they were home a lot more. I think they were finishing out their home offices, they were moving, they were doing all kinds of stuff. We know they were moving because they were calling us to move. And we were running around like our hair was on fire, okay? So then what happened is the unemployed people dramatically decreased, and then the amount of job openings went way up. And what happened there is the employers needed their employees more than the employees needed the employers. Now we know what happens whenever we get into a seller's market. The sellers get to choose price, terms, conditions, negotiations. If you will just accept my offer, you can have my entire family. And that's essentially what happened in the job market at the time, to where the employees said, I'm going to dictate my price, my terms, my conditions.
McDonald's, they make $21 an hour.
There was an imbalance between the two, which is why during these time frames, whenever you have something like that, then they're trying to rebalance people. Because what happened in this little section right here, I'm going to switch slides real quick to make sure everybody can see. What happened in this little section right here is then the employees, their salaries doubled to tripled in many conditions. And then we also know that the cost of inflation had gone up. So the cost of goods went up and the cost of people went up. So then that double created inflation because, you know, business owners aren't just going to take it on the chin. They're going to bake it into the cost of what they're doing. So that was the challenge there. So then they had to bring this back together to make sure that we want to close the gap to where there's a healthy balance of everybody who wants a job has a job, but nobody gets to 100% dictate the job, right? So that's the goal, is to get back here. Now we are above a little bit where we need to be, but at least we were close together. You could barely see it, but right at the end, right there, you see the blue popping up, which means that the unemployed people was then outnumbering the amount of jobs that were available. So then the alarm sounded of, oh my gosh, we are unbalancing our economy, because if people are unemployed, they can't afford to live. And that creates a problem because inflation is still out of balance. So then all of government, Federal Reserve, everybody was trying to decide, what do we do with the cost of things and how do we get people employed? Well, the number one way to get people employed is through the housing market. We just happen to be it. Think about it this way. If you are going to purchase a car, it's a large purchase. And they do it through the cost of money, and the two main things that you loan on is a house and a car, okay? But think about it, if you do it through a car, and you buy the car and you drive off the lot, are you typically buying 10 or 12 different services to go along with that car, or you typically buy it and then you drive it off the lot and you're pretty good? Usually that's about it, okay? But when you buy a house, how many different services do you then buy in the moving process? You buy movers, you buy carpet cleaners, you buy window washers, you buy a house cleaner, you buy furniture, you buy a new washer dryer, you buy new countertops, you buy new floors, you buy all kinds of stuff. So the number one way to pump money into the economy is through us, the housing industry, which is why they play with the cost of lending of, do we want more people to buy houses or do we want less people to buy houses? How much money do we want to pump into the economy? So if unemployment, there's too many unemployed people and not enough job openings, the way you create job openings is by giving people, freeing up some of their money so that they can go pour money into the economy, which then gives jobs, more people that they need to serve, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why they're king. The second thing is GDP, which is gross domestic product, okay? And this was a huge topic of conversation just because of the whole tariff situation. GDP really truly matters because in a perfect world, at 2% growth is considered a healthy market. At 1.4% growth, there was a big old check mark that was considered good enough because we want slightly under the growth of whatever the standard is of what they want it to be, because we have to intercept where we were supposed to be because the cost of things got so expensive, okay? So 1.4, we considered that a win. However, the definition of a recession in real estate is, or definition of a recession in the economy, period, is if there are 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP growth. There could be a very fast recession, there could be a very long recession. However, do we think of 2020 as a real estate recession?
No.
No, not necessarily. It was a very quick recession of what happened, but we technically had 2 quarters in a row of recession. So therefore, it was considered a recession because of it. Technically, in the last 50 years, we've had around 13 different recessions. We can just only name like 2 or 3 of them. It's interesting how it works that way. However, at our 1.4% growth, it was considered looking good, okay? So we've got one that was doing good, and then we sounded the alarm. We've got one that's a check mark, so now we've got to look at the last one, inflation. So inflation, again, the target is to have 2% growth. So that's what this little purple line is here. And then on our, if we are looking at inflation, again, if we go back to 2020, the cost of things went absorbently large, okay? So things got really expensive, and then you hear people griping about it gets expensive because it got so expensive in such a short, condensed amount of time. But we also know, are the cost of things today the same as the cost of things in 1950? No, but if we had an exact 2% target on increasing inflation 2% every year, we didn't gripe as much. It's because it was a small change over time. The main problem was the large change in a condensed amount of time. So whenever this happened, it happened. And then economists had to decide, how in the world are we going to intercept the trend line of where we should be, right? And we have 2 different options of ways to do that. Option number 1 is bring it down extremely quickly, which the only way to do that is essentially by obliterating the economy. That does not sound like the best idea because usually people don't get reelected whenever they obliterate the economy. So then they had to look at what's option number 2. Option number 2 is, how do we do a takedown schedule of intercepting the trend line. And they said likely, originally, it was by about 2024 to 2025 is when we were supposed to intercept the trend line. However, they are slowly making decisions, which is why we keep hearing the term a soft landing. A soft, have y'all heard that term? Okay. All a soft landing means is how do we bring the cost of things down, keep everybody who wants a job having a job, keep GDP growth happening, all without making sudden movements to where they are inching forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. And that's why there's so much back and forth on news of what's happening, okay? Is because we're all trying to intercept this trend line. There's been a ton of articles right now in the news about inflation and how we're going backwards a little bit, and is this gonna work us towards moving forward to where we need to be, and where are we gonna intercept the trend line? Prior to everything happening right now, it looks like we were actually going to intercept the trend line closer to mid-2027. It had projected 2026 on here. Just based on what I'm seeing, I'm thinking it's probably closer to about early to mid-2027. As of right now, I don't know. There's a lot of TBD of what's happening in the air. What I want you to understand from this is, do y'all remember when in last quarter of last year, around October, November timeframe, Federal Reserve was saying, oh, no more price cut or rate cuts, we're sticking with what we're doing. And then just all of a sudden it felt like out of the blue there was a rate cut. Ironically, this is August of 2025, of when it started outsourcing the unemployed people was too high. So ironically, that's right around the same time of, oh, price cut. We got to pour some money into the economy. We got to get people needing jobs, or we got to get jobs needing people. And that's right around that time. What we learned, but if you lower the price of things, people are pouring more money into the economy, which we know that higher demand also equals higher prices. So that means it helps us not intercept the inflation line, right? So what do? Do we lower the price of loans, or do we not lower the price of loans? They're trying to make decisions on exactly what to do. But what we did learn is when inflation and unemployment were a direct head-to-head of which one do we pick, we learned that they picked unemployment. So when you are talking to consumers about what they are going to do, and especially right now with a bunch of uncertainty of what's going to happen in the market, you know what are the 3 factors that we need to be watching in order to predict what's going to happen, right? Everybody clear on that? Okay, perfect. I hope you hear that as an economic discussion, not always as a political one. Okay, inflation, affordability. Okay, all I want you to see on this one is there are 2 different types of affordability on what's happening. There's a historical average all the way back from 1972, and then there's a historical average from around 2000, 1998. The reason why there's 2 different averages is because we know roughly 40% of the people in the home buying process, 40% of home buyers are millennials, and we know that there are some below that, okay? So we're just gonna say an average of half the market is used to this and half the market is used to this. So what happened is if somebody purchased a home or knew what the word economy meant in 1972 or prior, they were looking at interest rates now saying, what's the problem? I don't get it. However, millennials, 50% of the purchasing market was not born yet. They were born right around here-ish, okay? And then they were graduating high school and college and learning what the economy meant right around here-ish. They were signing student loans, they were signing car loans, they were signing up for credit cards, they were doing all the things, okay? And they chose their life budget off of these numbers, roughly 17% of their income going towards housing expenses. So then they solidified it for a couple of years of, okay, I figured out how to make this work. And then in a pretty short condensed amount of time, it essentially doubled on the cost of how much money is going towards housing. So that's why we're hearing so much squealing from 50% of the market, and we have to understand who are we talking to and how do we have that conversation with them. Because what they budgeted, somebody moved the cheese on them, okay? And it would be the equivalent of somebody who is purchasing a house here, then saying, hey, you're gonna have to pay for 2 homes. I expect you to buy 2 homes. Because they didn't ask for student loan, I mean, they signed up for them, so yes, they had a choice of going to college or not going to college. However, at the same time, what we have to understand is sometimes car loans and student loans are so expensive, it's essentially a second mortgage for people. So it's the equivalent of asking these people to buy 2 houses when they're 25 years old, and then wondering why these people can't buy 1 house when they're 25 years old, okay? So it's just different. I just want you to hear that there are 2 different messages, because we're at a 50-50 right now on who we're talking to. So we must have creative financing. We must have the ability to have those creative conversations. I read an article this morning that, I'm going to butcher the percentage, but most percentages are made up anyways. It was a high percentage, like close to the 50 percentile of $1 million mortgages are ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, right now. Isn't that interesting? It was very, we'll have to look it up. I'm sure I butchered the percentage, so, take that with a grain of salt. But my first thought was, I need to be talking about ARMs a lot more. Now, I'm not actively selling anymore, but we need to be talking about ARMs a little bit more, especially for somebody that's over $1 million. And it was talking about on an ARM, then you have a lower interest rate. So it said the ARM for these people was 5.3%, whereas a 30-year mortgage was at 6.4% right now. That's a big difference. It was saying it's about $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year difference in payments, just by having a shorter term option. We need to be more educated on what options are on the table, because a couple of years ago, it was very easy for us to say, oh, you have a FHA, you have a VA, or you have a conventional. And then our big party trick was being able to say, well, if you have a conventional, you can actually put 3% down if it's your first time buying. And that was our party trick, right? Okay, well now our party trick needs to be that we are more educated on the types of loans. I'm not saying you have to qualify them and know all the ins and outs. And if you don't know the answer to this, take 2-3 lenders to lunch and just ask them about all their options. Ask about how many times that they can lock a rate. Some lenders, you can lock a rate once. Some lenders, you can lock a rate twice. And anything past that, if it goes down, then you have to pay per lock again after that. Some have unlimited locking. You can just keep locking rates multiple times until you close. You need to be able to ask these questions of what type of lender are you looking for, okay? Okay, days on market. All I want you to see here is we have 20% higher days on market on average across the country. So if that's the case, then we know that we have a longer sales cycle and we have a longer relationship with our consumers than what we've had in the past. We cannot allow it to be a surprise when they have 20% higher days on market when somebody lists, because sellers have this thing called time dysmorphia. They want to know, why did their neighbor down the street sell 4 months ago or 6 months ago for $30,000 over list price in 48 hours? You're like, what? That didn't pop up whenever I was looking at the comps. Can you give me the address to that? And turns out it was 2 years ago and they just forgot. And that is a normal thing to have time dysmorphia. We must educate, and we have to have a lot more patience because of it, because we're like, what in the world are you thinking? Okay, so now we're out of the economic side of this. But I want y'all to have the crystal ball. I want you to sound inherently different than everybody else. Because right now, it's just as much of an economics game as it is a beauty pageant game, okay? So, if we look at market shift actions, you are more than welcome to take pictures of these slides. You are more than welcome to, I can send out some of these, some of the first ones. I had to pinky promise Ruben, our chief economist, that I wouldn't give those out. However, if you're looking for updated stuff, then it's all posted on K2B Connect from after family reunion. Okay, market shift actions. If you would like to listen, there's a full podcast. It's an hour-and-a-half long, 2-part podcast from a couple of ladies. It's called Empire Builders, and it's from back in August of last year, and they talked about how do you have market shift conversations and pricing conversations. I just went and took all of the notes and the high points and turned them into these beautiful black slides. Okay, so if you would like to listen to that, you are more than welcome to. There's part 1 and a part 2 back in August, or you could just take the high notes. Okay, so main things that we're going to talk about is how do we set expectations with clients in a longer inventory and sales market at the appointment. We have to have the conversation at the appointment. Number 2, how do we service the client? The tools in your tool belt. Because before, a couple of years ago, when we had tools in our tool belt, We had to put them all on the table in the first 48 hours, otherwise you lost your opportunity to show your value proposition. Well, things have inherently changed. So now if we have 20% longer days on market and our average days on market are in the high 30s, that's about 4 weeks-ish of being on the market with somebody. We have to have, what do you pull out in week 1? What do you pull out in week 2? What do you pull out in week 3? What do you pull out in week 4? We have to operate different. Otherwise we pull it all out and then they're like, now what? They're like, that was everything. We can't do that, okay? Number 3 is, what is the cadence of communication? How do we lean in and show up to the fun conversations and the tough conversations with professionalism? / if you are part of the 80% of agents who have been in, actually I think it's 60%, we're just making up all kinds of percentages today. A large majority of agents that have only been in the business since COVID or after, then you don't know how to call and tell your sellers nothing has happened. So, how do we have that conversation with professionalism, okay? And then number 4 is, what specifically is the client expecting from you as their trusted expert in order to meet and exceed their expectations? Okay, because I made these slides, I didn't know really where to put this, so it came down to the bottom here. But we have to find out the seller's perspective and experience in the current market. So that needs to be added as part of your listing presentation on the front end, asking them about, tell me about your perspective of what is going on in the market right now. And then you bring them back to that 4 quadrants that we talked about at the beginning. Oh yeah, that's accurate. That's a little bit more West Coast. Here's what's happening in the Midwest. Oh yeah, that's accurate. That's actually is happening in what's called the Triangle of Texas. And that's true. But here's what's happening in the Midwest. So that way it's an educational conversation rather than a nope, you're wrong conversation. Okay? And then I love what, I think it was Sarah Reynolds who said this one. She said, operational excellence builds confidence for the consumer. If they believe you have it, they will give trust, confidence, and they will feel secure. So all operational excellence means, truthfully, is just repeatable systems, okay? So repeatable systems is what can they expect from you. If we are particularly talking about the topic of listings and price reductions, then they need to know that our first thing is not going to be to come to them. Our first thing that we are going to do is we are going to look at ourselves first and come to them second. So if y'all heard of, I think his name is Frank, the promise script. Have y'all heard of that before? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's and 1 yes. Okay, so the promise script, I think his name is Frank. I get it wrong. Tony, I get it wrong every single time. Okay, but the promise script, that's what matters. Yeah. The promise script is, hey seller, I want to make you a promise. Is that okay with you? And they say, sure. And you say, I want to promise you that by the end of this transaction, you are going to look at me and you're going to tell me that you cannot possibly believe that anybody else could have given you a better experience. I can't promise that things are going to go perfectly smoothly, but you are going to believe that we handled it and that you received the best experience possible. I will know that I have achieved that if by the closing table, then you have given me a referral for somebody else that you want to have the same experience. I will know that I did not do that for you if by the closing table you've not given me a referral for someone. And I would like permission to be able to ask you what I did to not earn that referral. Is that okay with you? And that guy is in a very small, I can't remember where he is. I feel like somewhere in the Northeast somewhere.
Wow, I thought he was in Florida, but he might be.
Don't believe anything that I say. But I just remember he had a story. No, I know he's somewhere in the North-ish because he had a story about a client that had a deer die in the backyard. And then there was a showing and he didn't have enough time to go remove the deer, so he covered it with snow instead. Okay.
I'll send it out with the recap. Not the story about the deer.
Not the story about the deer. Okay, but regardless, so that's the promise script. But there's another promise script of, hey seller, I want you to know that with average housing days on market being up by 20%, and 3/4 of the houses going on the market are having price reductions, I want you to know what to expect from me if and when that happens. So we communicate. and you can tell them, here are 13 different things that I look for that's on my end first before I ever even approach you talking to you about repricing this property. And a couple of things that you can look for is, how's the front photo? So an example of this is realtors have this not so great thing that we do. Notice I said we in there because I did this too. Where whenever we list a property, picture number 1 will be of the front of the house. Yes, you have a blue front door. Okay, and then picture number two will be when you first walk into a house and there's a formal dining room. Nobody uses those anymore. And then picture number 3 is showing the office. Okay, yes, that's important, but this is like a box. It's very not exciting at all. And then picture number 4 is kind of in the hallway between the stairs and a half bathroom, and it shows you the half bathroom. At least close the toilet, please. Okay, and then picture number 5 shows the stairs going upstairs. Yes, there's carpet on them. Okay, and then picture number 6 opens up to the completely open, renovated, beautiful living room, and then the beautiful kitchen. Well, statistically speaking, people only look at the first 3 to 5 photos of a house to decide if they're going to look at the rest of the photos.
Yep.
So we just told them, yes, we have a front door like everybody does. Yes, we have a formal dining room, which is wasted square footage, and we have to figure out what the heck we're going to do in there. And then we have a box of an office, and we have carpeted stairs, and we have a half bathroom with wood floors. So
what do you suggest?
So what we need to do is, like in this example, picture number 1 needs to be the showstopper of a kitchen.
That's what I thought, the kitchen.
Yes.
Because that's what every woman wants.
Yeah, and then picture number 2 needs to be the 3/4 of an acre backyard that has this big sprawling grassy area. And then picture number 3 can be the updated, master bathroom upstairs, whatever you want it to be. So all of that being said, that we have to earn the views for the rest of the pictures past the first 3 to 5 pictures.
But then after that, do you go I hate looking at a listing where it's all over I can't envision the house. We were trained by our broker to do it the other way, to go in order.
And you know what?
So I understand boring stairs. I don't even include that in my pictures.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have that. I would have dining room, living room, kitchen, or vice versa. But then some kind of order, because some people don't want a big backyard.
Well,
I see a big backyard like, oh, a lot of mowing.
Yeah.
Let's downplay that.
there's a rule though with our MLS or Dayton's MLS
It has
that
to
it
be
has
the front
to be
of
the front of
the front of the house has to be.
So number 2 makes sense that it's kitchen or whatever the.
Highlight.
Well, we're
We'll
looking at
have-
the first 3
we'll
to
get
5
highlights.
pictures.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna fight you on that strategy, but I will caution anybody who has, say, a home that they're getting ready to list, and all they did in that house is the kitchen, okay? So if you take the front of the house, then you show this beautiful kitchen, right? And then everybody goes, yeah, let's take it, let's go, let's see it right there. And then I showed that house to these clients, and they go, golly, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, they didn't do
That's a
this."
fair point.
Right.
So
I'm just saying, go with, in my humble opinion, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the whole thing, I'm just saying.
That makes sense.
She's saying get them in the door.
I'm
Wait,
saying-
well, no, we're actually saying the same thing. The difference is I'm not saying upload 2 pictures and don't upload the rest of the house, and that's what you're concerned about. I'm saying upload the rest of the house so they know it's all there, but no client looks at 2 pictures and says, book the showing, I'm not looking at the rest of the pictures.
I get it.
They say, I'm going to look at the rest of the pictures because holy moly, look at this kitchen. Just don't over edit the rest of the pictures, which is what you're
And I
concerned
did
I
about.
guess that's
I
what
got
I'm
my
saying.
listing flagged because I had a client, her house was on the market for a week, no offers. She said, well, why don't, she thought she knew because she was an agent 30 years ago.
Oh, perfect.
Why don't you, the kitchen is the showstopper, put that as the first picture. So I did it, and then I got, Mark, the Dayton MLS sent me a thing.
Oh,
better
you
put
gotta
the-
love that Dayton
You better put the
MLS.
front of the house, and so I called her, I'm like, well, it lasted for like 6 hours,
Hey, at least
we're back
Zillow
to the
lags.
first, we're back to the front of the house, sorry about that.
There is, okay, can I say one thing? There is an agent in this office that follows Anna's strategy. She has to have the front photo, and then after that, she starts with
Showstopper.
and I'm just saying, she's one of the top 2 to 3 agents every month. So something's working for her.
But here's what, okay, how many pictures do we have as max in the DABR? It's large. It's a large, it's like 50 or 60. Oh, it's large.
Like 100.
Most MLSs have a max of like 35 or 40 pictures.
I wish
Yeah.
that's what we had.
So what you can do is you can post in the first 5 to 7 pictures the showstoppers, and then start the house back over again, and then do a walk.
Gotta get it through.
Oh, okay.
So you can do that too. Yeah, that's okay. I understand. This is very contrary to normal
Yeah.
agenthood.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's get back to that. Man, I didn't realize that was going to be such a hot button. Okay, so front photo.
All the time. She captained a month last year, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll just say one thing that the reasoning, so if you, I mean, a lot of these clients went through 2021, 22, 23, where you didn't get 15 minutes to look at a house that
True.
popped on the market that day,
True.
Yeah.
and you looked at the first 3 pictures and you went, let's go. You see what I'm saying?
Well, they looked at the first 3 pictures and said, I'm going to go. And then they looked at the rest of the pictures to solidify I'm going.
I'll disagree with that statement because when I had the client, the buyers, they would send me the thing and go, can we get there now?
Yeah.
And I would try to get a showing,
And they would-
just show up.
Yeah.
You know,
I would argue we're not in that market anymore.
I'm not
Not at all.
arguing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
not
he's just
arguing.
You're just
I'm
saying what
trying
people have
to-
done.
I'm just trying to
Oh, okay,
say
yeah.
why I
And
think
I
that
have the
people
same buyers too.
still do look
Yeah.
at the first 3 or 4 pictures and they go,
And then they hit the send
and
button.
they hit the send button.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that they stop after they hit the send button.
And then you
So I
respond
agree
to
with
them
you.
and say, did you see picture number 12? You said you
I-
wanted a renovated
that's-
bathroom.
that's
Oh, I
what
didn't
I've
see
been
that
starting.
picture.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
kind of where the
Hey, did you
interceptor's
see
gonna.
that?
And that's normal,
Yeah.
but we don't want to plan our life on the outlier. We want to plan them on the norm and then understand how to handle the outlier. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, second thing is we have to look at positioning. So we have this beautiful thing. This is really horrible, but when I was an agent, this was a long time ago, not in this market, I used to copy the previous realtor's listing description and then paste it into mine because I have zero form of creativity in my soul. However,
You can
now,
person ChatGPT.
now
Yeah.
we have ChatGPT, and I want to encourage you the positioning of it. We can R&D and use the resources that are available to us. So everybody understands what Google SEO is, right? Search engine optimization.
Yeah.
When somebody is looking at purchasing here, let's say somebody is looking at purchasing in Kettering. Kettering is very different than downtown Dayton. Kettering has larger lots, it's got more mature trees, it's just a different feel. So we want to know, or oh my gosh, I just had a brain fart. It starts with an O. Everybody, Oakwood. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Just minor brain fart, but Oakwood. Everybody loves the schools there. So people are Googling about the schools in Oakwood. People are Googling about the historicness of Oakwood. So we need to have our positioning of our property pop up by those types of questions. So you can ask artificial intelligence, write a listing description for this house, describe it. And also search for what are the top search questions when people are Googling or searching in this area, and then use words that would make it pop up to the top of the list when somebody is searching for houses in this area based on what they're looking for. So you're in your description for something in Oakwood, you would have something about the schools and in the description. In Kettering, you would have something about the larger lots or the trees or whatever people are Googling in Kettering. So you can use that kind of stuff for the positioning. Okay, next is all MLS data syndicating properly. So I'm sure you have never had this before, but have you ever had where you posted something on Zillow and even though that it was listed in Kettering, it actually showed up in Miami Township?
No.
Who the heck do you call at Zillow to tell them to fix it?
Nobody, you can't talk to anybody at Zillow.
It's usually a Google problem because my client's getting ready to list and it says she lives in Benner Field House in Xenia, but she lives across the street. So I just submitted to Google for her, changed the PIN, and in 6 hours they changed the PIN for her. It's been like that for years. DoorDash keeps trying to deliver across the street, and I'm like, oh yeah, it says on there for Google Maps, just submit a change in PIN.
Yeah.
And they'll look at it and go, oh yeah, this is the address,
Well,
and they'll fix it for you.
Usually the only time they really notice this kind of stuff is when you list the property and they're like, that's not where my house is! What did you do?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? And you're like, well, I didn't do
And
that.
you're gonna go to a listing
My-
and the agent didn't notice.
Yeah, my best friend Zillow did it.
My best friend Zillow.
Okay, so this is the kind of list of stuff that we have to look at for us first, and then we go to them, okay? And then we have to communicate that we did it. So historically, we didn't have enough time to say, hey, we actually did this. Now we actually have to communicate that we did it. Okay, the next thing that you could do is, I know I used the wrong term here, I really need to edit this, but set the sellers up on an MLS lookup. So you know how on MLS, like if you have a client who's looking at purchasing, we're just gonna use Oakwood a bunch of times. Purchasing at Oakwood, you map out Oakwood, and anything that pops on the market or goes under contract pops up in Oakwood, right? Okay, well, you can do that for listings. If somebody is selling in Oakwood, then you can pop it, you can do a MLS lookup that anytime somebody goes active or pending in their area that competes with them, it shows up in their email inbox. And the reason why is because let's say seller is driving home from work and there's 2 houses in their neighborhood and they're driving home and not his house, so the other 50% of the house is listed. All of a sudden there's a new little sign that slid into that little writer spot that says under contract or pending. And they're like, what the heck? Why does their house go under contract? Why did my house not go under contract? And then what do they inevitably do?
Yeah.
Call you.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world? What is happening? Why did you not do your job? So we want the information coming from us because we also know that at the listing table, we told them, listen, we have 2 different options of what's happening. Your house is either selling other houses or other houses are selling your house. It's one of the 2. So we want to be the communicator, but I also don't expect you to sit out in that little island out there and spend the entire day looking for changes on the MLS. Use the technology that's available for you. Might be dinosaur technology, but at least it's technology available to you, courtesy of the Dayton MLS. Okay. Next is how do we have communication that is professional and consistent for people? So Seychelle Van Poel is an agent out of the Dallas area. She is a fantastic agent, and this is her strategy of what she does. So on Tuesday, you can email your listings with the home data performance. You can use things like stats of what's happening in the MLS. You can use showing time for how many showings have been done around that area. You can use, you know how on Zillow and Realtor.com and Homes.com they have a views and a hearts and a favorites stuff? You can use that stuff.
We have broker metrics here at that computer in the office that y'all can all log into every week and go and.
That's so generous. Do y'all understand? That stuff is ridiculously expensive. Broker metrics.
Oh, okay.
That stuff is insanely expensive. Y'all are so generous for providing it here. Okay, so on Tuesday you can email statistics of home performance, okay? So this is just statistics of what's happening in the area. AK, you're communicating that, hey, this is what's happening around us and this is what's happening with you. I had an agent come up to me, this is probably a month ago now when I was teaching a similar class to this, and she said, so I have this $2.5 million property listed and we've had no showings. How do I know if I'm supposed to do a price reduction or not? And I said, well, how many houses between 2 and 3 million within a 15-minute radius of that house have had showings? And she's like, I don't know. Like, well, then how do we know if we need to do a price reduction? Because if there's been 50 showings on houses priced between 2 and 3 million within 15 minutes of you, the buyers are there, you're just not getting them. So you need to be having that conversation. However, if there have been 0 showings and you've had 0, that just means the buyers aren't there and you need to have patience. Use the resources that are available to you, okay? That'll tell us real quickly. Okay, on Thursday, this is when we pick up the phone and we call our sellers and we tell them voice to voice what is the game plan, because we know that in the absence of communication, people make up stories. Yeah. So the game plan is, hey, you know, this is an example of, hey, I see that we have 3 showings that are scheduled for this weekend. Typically on a Saturday, realtors don't go show a property and then they immediately come home and they're super excited to submit the feedback. Instead, they want to go hang out with their family, rightfully so. So I want you to understand that I'm going to follow up with every agent that shows your property anywhere between 3 and 5 times to get as much information and feedback as we possibly can. That's what I'm going to do for you this weekend, okay? So we have to tell them, because you might be pounding the pavement really trying to sell this house and they think you're sipping margaritas over at Chewy's at Austin Landing instead. They genuinely don't know. We have to retrain ourselves to get good at telling what we're doing to work for people, okay? One thing that you could do is you could call other listing agents that are under contract or just around your listing, and you could create relationships with those people. Ask for what's the main feedback that you're getting. Here's the feedback that I'm getting. Start sharing stuff with them. How many showings have you had? How many people came through your open house? Oh, here's what I had. Because who knows, you guys might be able to trade people back and forth where you say, hey, I had agent XYZ come through my house and the feedback was this and your house doesn't have them. Let me send them over to your house. And then if you can get that house under contract, you have more people looking at your house. You can never outgive what you receive. Okay. The number 6 on here is an example of, remember we talked about tools in the tool belt whenever you're pulling them out. So let's say that if we have an average of 4 weekends on the market, you list a property and weekend number 1, you do an open house and you don't receive an offer. Then weekend number 2, you do an open house and you don't receive an offer. Then weekend number 3, you do an open house, you don't receive an offer. Is that boring or exciting? Boring. Okay, what does that tell about our marketing strategy? Not great. Okay, no creativity. So then option number 2 is we list a house on the market, we do an open house. We didn't receive an offer. Number 2 weekend on the market, we then we door knock 20 across the street and 10 on either side, and we invite the neighbors to a neighborhood only open house for an hour prior to the event and tell people, hey, if you've got anybody who's interested in moving to the area, then you're welcome to send them, or and you want them to have their private neighborhood only open house, or if you're just curious about the own value of your own home, we just gave you an open house. You're welcome to come to it. And then you hold another open house after that for 2 hours. Okay, so that's a little more creative. And then weekend number 3 on the market, that's when you pull out we're getting into ice cream truck weather, but you can also do the taco truck,
Coffee.
coffee truck,
Oh,
any
wait,
of
so
that.
maybe they didn't want that because they dumped their coffee in the house.
That's true.
Why did you wait until the second weekend to do the neighborhood?
Because you're building on what you're doing. You don't necessarily
Okay.
have to,
Okay.
but we want to see, the
Well, I
consumers
think
want to
she's
see
saying
us
that because we're trained
building.
to do that first.
You can do that first, you absolutely
Right.
can.
Yeah.
I'm just showing,
And a progression.
a progression,
Okay.
essentially,
Yeah, that makes
of that
sense.
kind of
You're
stuff.
working.
Yeah, so sellers crave consistency, they crave communication because that's what gives them confidence. So,
So I'm guessing like you would do the 3 weekends, like if you were saying there aren't the buyers looking in the area, like you wouldn't do the price reduction, like if you're getting enough.
well, price reduction has a lot more to do with how many showings that you have. What I'm trying to
Not the
say,
open house.
yeah, what I'm
Okay.
trying to say is if you have an average of 34 days on the market,
Mm-hmm.
what is your plan to build on your marketing plan to where consumers don't just seeing you do the same thing over and over and over
Sure.
again? Because
Okay.
if we know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, then that's not what we want to communicate how we operate as agents.
Okay.
We want to communicate that we build, we change, we pivot, we're creative, we've got all of that. That's what makes us different.
Okay.
Okay, so conversation tracks that work. So what do we say to people? 43% of home sellers report crying at some point during the process, okay? So if that's the case, they need to know that this is highly risky for them, it's highly emotional for them, it's a challenge. So we want to tell them, I know this feels overwhelming, this is just another day at work for me, I have you. We're doing okay. We need to tell them that I know you feel wildly out of control, but I feel in control. Granted, we don't know what the next turn is going to show us, but we do know how to handle it and what to do and say next, okay? Number 2 is we have to ask them, what do you think about all that information? Because typically what happens is if we're stagnant on the market, we believe our value proposition is coming in and telling people exactly what to do. Let me just tell you what we're going to do. We need to, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very good reason. So that means that we need to present the information and then we need to ask them what's their thoughts and then to create a game plan collaboratively with them. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is an example that they gave on the podcast. And I'm going to tell you the exact same example. So there was a husband and wife that were selling a house. And at the listing table, they told the realtor that the most important thing for selling this house was the price that they get. I think it was around an $800,000 house, so it was a little bit more on the luxury side, and it was expected to be on the market for roughly 60 days. It sat on the market for 60 days, as expected, and then they received an offer. The offer was slightly below list price. It wasn't an unreasonable amount, it was just below list price, and the sellers rejected the offer. And the agent thought, oh no, we're gonna be dealing with these kind of people. But they thought, oh, we have another showing that's scheduled. We'll see how that turns out. We'll make decisions from there. Well, the next showing decided to submit an offer, and they submitted a very similar offer to the first one. So we hear from that, oh, that solidifies the price of the property, and we know that that is actually the value of the property, and we were a little high. And the sellers rejected the second offer. Thought, oh no. So the realtor did what any realtor would do in this moment, and they had a come to Jesus meeting with the sellers and said, hey, we got to figure this out. Like, I know you said price of the property is most important, but the market is communicating to us this is the value of the house. And these are good offers, and I need to understand why you're not taking these offers. And the wife looked at the realtor and said, well, we couldn't take those offers. It was impossible because the closing date was scheduled on my due date.
Oh, honey. Oh, honey.
And so what I need you to hear from that
Communication.
is, well, it seems reasonable if yes, have communication. However, what we have to remember is historically what we've come from is an average of 1 to 2 weeks on the market. That's not enough time for things to change. If we are now at a month later, or sometimes 2 or 3 months later, with a house sitting on the market, that's enough time for things to change. So let's say we're coming up on spring selling season. Actually, it's March now. Outside, I would really like if it would pick up with that, but it's spring, surprise. And let's say somebody lists their house in May and they've got kids. Come August, is the price of the property still the most important thing to them?
Oh, no, their school.
Now that matters. Okay, well, let's say somebody's looking at doing we've got a lot of military here that gets transferred out. And let's say they're trying to sell their house here and they're staring down the barrel of, I'm gonna have to go and leave my family behind to move. Is price of the property still the most important thing for them? Not anymore. So anytime we have higher days on market, we have to continually ask people, have your priorities changed, okay? So the third one on here is based on where we're at, have any priorities shifted for you? Okay. Based on what you've told me, here's what I would recommend. We have to retrain ourselves to keep asking the question of have your priorities shifted. Okay, next is when the market speaks. So who's talking to you and what are they saying? So price is king. You can never outmarket a bad price, okay? I think we all know that's true, but I know that our sellers like to act like it's 2022 and our buyers think that it's 2008 and then we're stuck somewhere in between. So if we have 2 weeks on the market and there are no showings at all, then we know that agents are the ones communicating with you, telling you that you are overpriced. Usually somewhere between like around 5% off on price is where you're off. And what's happening is a buyer calls and tells their agent, oh my gosh, did you see that new house that just popped on the market in Oakwood? And they say, yeah, I did. It's really severely overpriced. It's not even worth us going to look at it. We need to let them sit on the market for a little bit. It is
It's
so
gone tomorrow.
well, these are the houses that are sitting on the market.
Okay.
So that's realtors communicating with you. It's not even worth my time for me to take my buyers to look at your property. If we have 2 weeks on the market with just a couple of showings and no offer, that means it's the equivalent of, let's say that you go to your favorite store and you try on, let's say you're going over to the Green or something like that, and you find some really cute pants over at one of your favorite stores over there, and you go into the changing room to try them on, and you look in the mirror and you're like, man, I look really good in these. And then you pull out the price tag and you say, not for that price, I don't. And then you put them back on the hanger and you put them back. That's the equivalent of a bunch of people coming to look at the house and not writing the offer. Is they're saying, it was good enough for me to look at, it's not good enough for me to buy, right? So usually you're off by 2 to 3%, and that's consumers, that's buyers communicating with you. So the first one was agents, the second one is buyers communicating with you. However, if you have any question whatsoever, just look at the national debt clock. If you just Google it, you can see, first off, it's terrifying to look at, but second off, people have the least amount of cash that they have had in a very long time, with the highest amount of credit card debt that they have had in a, if not ever, in a very long time. So that means houses, the national debt clock. Will you just Google the national debt clock real quick? Just Google it and we'll do one of these Van White situations.
Watch it flip numbers.
Yeah, it's very ugly. National debt clock.
What the difference?
It's about.
It's so beautiful.
Oh, that? Oh my gosh.
So much beauty.
Um,
Oh, it's so
That's so
beautiful.
Show the camera too.
Oh. Ta-da! Okay, so down in this corridor here-ish, it will tell you what the average debt is for people, credit card debt. It will tell you their average amount of cash that they have, and that's not enough to buy a house, hint, hint. So that's why everything is literally a beauty contest. The number one thing that you could do is, let's say, right around the baseboards, let's say there's just a line of dirt on the baseboards right there. Immediately, when you see that, what do you think is happening with the filter and the HVAC system?
It's not working properly.
It's probably not been changed in a
Yeah, so
while.
the filter's probably.
How do you think the condition of the roof is? Probably not great.
The same
Oh
as
my
that.
gosh, that crack is starting to look like a foundation issue all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the number one thing that you can do for houses right now is a deep clean.
Wow.
Deep clean. That is $500-600. It's worth probably $5,000 to $6,000.
Wow.
Just that one small thing. Because immediately people start deciding what's happening with the rest of the internal guts of the house that you can't quite see because of
You
that.
can't even clean your bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clean. Because how many times has your client looked into the microwave and said, "This tells me everything I need to know about the house"?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Or-
had clients who did an inspection, and the inspector opened the dishwasher, and there was a bowl of vinegar in there to like eliminate
Oh,
smells
yeah,
because
yeah.
they were moving overseas.
Yes.
And it basically like tells me like they took care of that house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They cared. I just realized I'm 10 minutes over. Are y'all okay? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. Okay, we'll be quick. Okay. Oh, I pressed more buttons. Okay. So, 30 days on the market with no offer. Everyone is telling you either price or condition is not right. Both people are talking to you. If you have 60 days on the market, then you're not being proactive. You've kind of lost the market. You're super behind. And I will say that with the asterisk of sometimes you're pulling your hair out being like, please, we need to do something. And they're just saying no. So what do we do with difficult people? This is second to last slide, I promise. So second to last slide is, we don't love dealing with the waterworks, right? Of people, when you say, hey, we need to change the price of your property, and they're like, ah, why do people not like my house?
Aww.
Okay, so we want to, logic makes people think and emotion makes them act. However, in this situation, we want to be logic. We don't want to be in the emotion because we are trying to bring it back down to earth with people. So we have to have the conversation voice to voice. This is not something that you write in an email, you slide into their email inbox and let them think about it overnight. Because instead they're spiraling, creating stories of all the ways that you haven't done your job, okay? So we have to have this conversation voice to voice. So the way that we stop the blame game is we start with good news, I've done my job. That means good news, our marketing is working. If you have no showings, then we have more views than the competing homes. Use views, use hearts, use saves, use anything you can, right? Option number 2, if you have showings, good news, our marketing is working. I talked with the other listing agents of competing homes, and we have more buyers in the door than they do. I've done my job, okay? That's what we're starting with, okay? The next one says, the market seems to be telling us an X adjustment should get us into offer territory. Is it, I think that if we do this, or is it the market?
The market.
The market. It is a neutral third party that we are trying to sell to. An X adjustment. It is very specific. You can also do a range here. This does not need to be an actual number, okay? Is it, do we have a crystal ball to know that if we do a price reduction, we're definitely going to get an offer, and here's when we're going to get an offer?
No.
No. So we want to protect ourselves from that so they don't say, well, you told me if I do this, we will get an offer. So this is very important. Should get us into offer territory.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that territory.
Offer territory.
I like that.
So here's how this sounds. Good news, our marketing is working. We have more views than the competing homes. If you notice that there are 2 houses directly across the street from each other, you have 65 hearts and they have 23 hearts. It's a very large difference. So people are loving your home. We just have to get them in the home. So the market is truly telling us that an X adjustment, it should get us into offer territory. Tell me your thoughts on that. Now you are not on the hook for something. You are guiding people and you are interpreting the data of the market and you're using all available resources to you, okay? So we have to bring it back down. They tell you what they think, all the kind of stuff, and then you bring it back home with my job is not to determine the market, it's to interpret the market, what it's telling us. It's not us, it's not your home, it's just the market, okay? Okay, this last slide, we're almost bringing it home. Price adjustment strategy. So we cannot allow consumers to lead the price adjustment strategy conversation. Otherwise, they're gonna be like, man, $1,000 is a lot of money. Let's do $1,000 price adjustment, right? And that's a bit of a problem. Yeah, what is that gonna do? The whole reason for a price adjustment conversation, the whole reason for it, yeah, the whole reason for it is to reach a whole new set of buyers. That's not gonna make a hill of beans difference, right? Okay, so if they object, we have two different options. Have you ever played Two Truths and a Lie? Okay, we know the concept of it at least, right? Okay, it's kind of like that. We're gonna give two bad ideas and then one good idea, okay? So, bad idea number one, do nothing, okay? Bad idea number two, paper cut price adjustment strategy. It's an option. You can lay options on the table. The paper cut price adjustment strategy goes like this, is the market is telling us that a $25,000 price correction will get us into offer territory. And they're like, 5,000 at best. I'm not doing 25,000. That's ridiculous. You're not doing your job, blah, 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 all the things. You say, well, why don't we do this? We have a couple different options. We can do nothing. We can stay on the market. However, I'm concerned that's going to run the risk of then we're going to be further behind chasing the market. Option number two is going to be to do a paper cut price adjustment strategy. So that means that each week we're on the market, we'll do a $5,000 price correction. And if we don't receive offers by the end of the week, we'll do another $5,000 price correction until we get to the $25,000. Does that sound like a plan to you? So that means week number one, $5,000 price correction. We don't receive an offer. Week number two, we get a $5,000 price correction. We don't receive an offer. Week number three, we do a $5,000 price correction. We don't receive an offer. Week number four, we do a $5,000 price, or week number four, what do people expect?
Yeah, that.
The $5,000 price correction. They don't know where the floor is. They don't know that we're going to 25,000. So they're just waiting to see what's the lowest we'll go, or they'll create their own floor. So the benefit is you're getting closer. It's an option of how to get you to a price correction. I would not consider it the best option. But again, two truths and a lie. You got two bad options and then one good option. It's an option.
I feel like they'll just keep waiting.
Yeah.
They'll just keep waiting.
Yeah, or they write their own. Okay, next one is you can do a private showing deal. Has anyone done a reverse offer before? One? Oh, only one. Oh my gosh, I've had 3 people in the last month that have had reverse offers accepted.
I did one and didn't.
Okay, one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 1 out of 1.
Yeah.
So let's do more of them. I'm glad you've done it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So a reverse offer, it's super complicated. You know how you write an offer and then you sign at the bottom on the buyer field?
You just do it the same.
So you write an offer,
Same.
but you sign the seller field. It's the exact same thing. You don't even have to write an offer for what you have it listed on in the MLS. You can write a different offer if you want to. There's no restrictions around it.
So you submit it to the buyer, you
Sure do.
looked at your house?
And that's based
Yep.
on, like, if you get feedback and you can kind of adjust,
they
tell
liked
your
it.
seller, hey, this is what they didn't like, this is what they did like, maybe they'll be open to this offer.
Yeah, because everything is price, condition, and location. You
Yeah.
can't change
I
the
don't know why I've
location.
never heard that.
Because it's been 13 years since our last shift.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
gonna
that's
say,
in
you
this direction.
had buyers
I
come
was
in
in
the
the
woodwork,
woodwork.
now
And-
shift.
And oh, this is where the 80% came from. 80% of realtors have not been in a shift because it's been over 13
Okay,
years.
so I got a 19, so I was like,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, to be fair, the only reason that I knew anything about it is I had a client who had been a realtor and
Okay.
no longer a realtor.
Okay.
you make me feel
And-
better.
and
than
I
I
had
did.
a listing.
And he gave you the idea?
Yeah, I had the listing and like 4 people came in and they were all like interested and then they were all like on the
Kicking
fence
tires,
because
yeah.
everybody thought everybody was gonna write an offer and nobody wanted to be in the
That's,
bidding
I've
war.
heard that before.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was the feedback, you know, that was the feedback. Love the house, it's gonna go, don't wanna be in a bidding war, blah, you know, whatever. And this person said, write the offer to them.
Yeah.
And I was like,
So
what?
you got to pick the agent to work with.
Huh?
Yeah.
I just-
You get to
I
pick the
just-
seller and
That's
the
why
agent.
I'm like,
So
don't
you can
burn
put the
bridges
title
with
on the
agents,
wall.
cause you could
To
be
be fair,
knocked
I
out
didn't do
just
it
'cause you're.
officially. I mean, I just called them up and said, hey,
A verbal.
could we do this?
Yeah,
Could
verbal.
we do this? Could we do this? Could we do this?
Uh-huh.
I called them all.
Yeah,
You know,
so you-
and we
that's
got
smart
one.
though.
We did get an
Really
offer,
good.
but it's still the same. She
Uh-huh.
probably actually wrote the offer and sent it to him.
Yeah.
You know, but I thought my seller, or as a seller.
If your
So-
seller's
so
not
here's what
gonna
happened.
negotiate,
In the
that might
paper
be
cut-
even better.
Yeah, the paper cut price adjustment, you're training people to expect price adjustments. In this one, instead, you're able to privately have as many price adjustments as you want without it being public.
Not all
So
the buyers
imagine-
know what you're doing with all the other.
So imagine you had 10 showings that happened, and then you go to showing number 1 and you say, hey, I would like to write you an offer. Please make it only 24 hours, don't write one offer and offer it to multiple people, one at a time. Your broker
Yeah,
would just be
focus
so
on
mad.
one.
Yes, I'm trying to say your broker here, we love your broker. So, write one offer at a time, they say no, you go to the next person, $5,000 off, they say no, $5,000 off, they say no, $5,000 off, they say no. Now the seller's more willing to be like, clearly $5,000 off is not working, let's try $10,000 off. Go again, go again, go again, not working, 15,000 off, go again, go again, go again, you can write it. And then, if none of them take it and you run out of people, number 1, you just generated 10 offers out of thin air. You look like a hero. And number 2, now they say, clearly that's not working and nobody's willing to take it.
Wow.
You're justifying.
Let's do 25,000, and then you have one price correction to the entire market.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
This is
What's with
this.
these agents that do
This is
5 and
amazing.
10 and $20? Like, I've seen so many
They're
that do
trying-
$100.
Because
Stop it.
Is it just for the email goes out to people?
they're doing
again?
two things. They're
Refreshing it back to the top of the MLS.
Yes, and they're restructuring the pictures, but you can do that. So
Okay.
usually restructure the pictures, do a $20 price adjustment.
Like, I laugh when I see that. I'm like, that makes me not even wanna
Yeah, there's things.
work with you. Like,
Okay, so that's
Well, here's the
not what they're
thing,
doing
you
then.
never know if it's just the seller being
It could be a,
difficult.
it could
Yeah.
be a, yeah.
But it
that's
does
true.
communicate something. Okay, all of that, I'm way over, I wanna respect y'all's
Okay.
time, even though I've done a terrible job with that so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so private showing deal, and then when you get the agreement, then send over the adjustment paperwork quickly after the conversation and relaunch the home. Rewrite the property description, redo the photo order, relaunch that home,
Yeah, make it.
okay? And then remember to extend the expiration date at that point because you've done the heavy lifting and the work to get it here. Give yourself more time to be able to market the home, okay? And then in the conversation with compassion and strength. Remember we focused on logic before, and then we end it with compassion and strength, which compassion is bringing it back to emotion of, yes, I understand that you are a human inside of this house, and I understand that this is stressful. Okay, was this helpful?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, awesome, good, I'm very happy. Whopping 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Good job for you guys, sitting through it, thank you so much.
Sell those listings.
Sell those listings.